in the shadowed village of Ebon Ridge, nestled deep within a valley eternally shrouded in fog. People spoke of the Asterisk beast of Duskwood Asterisk. They whispered about it in hushed tones, a creature that appeared only under the pallor of a waning moon. But only one person knew the truth. His name was Corin, a loner who spent his days wandering the darkened woods. He wasn't always alone, he once had a family. A wife with hair as dark as the forest depths and a daughter with a laugh, like the first spring rain. But that was before the bite, before the mark of the wolf tainted his soul and tore his life apart. The curse claimed him slowly, stretching months before he felt the hunger. It began as a quiet ache, a gnawing emptiness, like a longing for something he'd never known. He fought it, hoping it was simply grief or guilt. But on the first full moon after his transformation, he lost all control. In a blur of red, he awoke the next morning to find the village dog dead at his doorstep, its blood staining his hands. From that night onward, he fled deeper into the forest whenever the moon called him. Years passed, and Corin became the lurking ghost of Ebon Ridge. The villagers knew something prowled their woods, a shadowed beast who could vanish into the mist with nothing but the flash of eyes, and a guttural snarl. They told stories of how the Asterisk beast of Duskwood Asterisk was immortal, a demon from ancient times. Some feared it, others sought it for power or revenge. Then came a hunter, no ordinary man, but someone who claimed to be a descendant of the first werewolf hunters. His blade soaked in silver, his eyes as cold as stone. He sought Corin not to kill him but to make him part of something greater, an army. A brotherhood of cursed souls with powers beyond mortal comprehension. But Corin resisted, clinging to a sliver of humanity that even the curse couldn't strip away. In their battle, the earth itself seemed to tremble, and the forest held its breath. Blood spilled, a mix of human and beast. But the hunter left, defeated, warning Corin that he would return, that others would come, each more determined than the last. Now, Corin remains hidden, nursing his wounds, haunted by visions of his lost family and the ominous threat of a coming war. He fears he cannot escape. He knows they will come for him, seeking the beast he has become. And he feels the blood stir within him, a deep, insatiable hunger growing stronger with each day, whispering that the next moon will be different, that something is drawing near, something darker than he has ever known. And the fog continues to blanket Ebon Ridge, hiding secrets even the shadows dare not reveal. As Corin lingered in the shadows of the deep woods, nursing his wounds, he sensed something strange in the air, a scent he'd never encountered before. It was subtle, barely perceptible, but it tugged at the wolf inside him. A pull stronger than the call of the moon, the whisper of ancient magic, perhaps, or the lingering traces of a curse older and darker than his own. Days passed, and Corin felt a change in the forest itself. The animals grew silent, their usual scurrying and chirping hushed, as if they, too, were listening to the ominous rhythm pulsing through the earth. At night, the fog thickened, winding through the trees like tendrils of ghostly fingers, almost as if it was trying to guide him somewhere, beckoning him deeper into the forest's dark heart. Against his instincts, Corin followed. The path took him to an old ruin he'd never seen before, a stone circle hidden under layers of moss, and broken by time. The air was thick with the stench of decay, but there was something else feeling, a memory that was not his own, but seemed to belong to the very earth beneath his feet. In the center of the stones lay a silver pendant, glinting under the moonlight. The intricate design was familiar, an insignia he'd seen long ago, around the neck of the first hunter who had attacked him. But how it got there, he couldn't begin to guess. As he picked it up, a sharp, chilling vision flooded his mind. He saw himself, not as he was now, but as something even more monstrous, standing at the head of a pack of wolves with blood-red eyes and human faces twisted in pain and fury. They weren't hunting him, they were following him, like a grim procession, waiting for his command. Startled, Corin dropped the pendant, but the vision lingered, a taunting reminder of something both within and outside of him. He looked around, feeling watched. The fog seemed to thicken, pressing close until he couldn't see his own hands. Then, from the silence, a voice echoed, low and menacing. It was not his own, but seemed to rise from the ancient stones, slipping through the fog like a serpent. Asterisk, they are coming. Corin, Asterisk, it whispered. Asterisk, and this time, you will not escape them. Asterisk, before he could react, the fog cleared, and he found himself alone, clutching the pendant. But something had changed. The scent from before had returned, sharper, closer. He knew, with a dread that gnawed at his gut, that the hunter's pendant was more than a relic. It was a summons, a call to something he had yet to face. Corin turned back toward the village, sensing that his time in the shadows was running out. The night would soon come when he would have to choose, to remain the hunted, or to rise as something the world had yet to fear. In the cold quiet of the night, Corin walked back toward Ebon Ridge, the pendant clutched tightly in his hand. The weight of it felt unnatural, heavier than silver should be, as if it bore with it an ancient burden. Every instinct in him screamed to discard it, yet he couldn't. Something about it tethered him, a dark, invisible thread tying him to a destiny he could neither see nor understand. As he neared the edge of the village, Corin's heightened senses picked up something unusual. Flickers of torchlight glowed in the distance, scattered among the trees gathering in the forest. He crept closer, concealed by the dense fog, and made out a circle of figures cloaked in dark robes, faces hidden beneath hoods. They chanted in low voices, words he couldn't understand, their breaths steaming in the night air. At the center of the gathering lay an altar, draped in black and marked with ancient symbols he recognized from his visions. The hunter's pendant symbol was carved into the stone, freshly etched, with blood still glistening in the grooves. Beside the altar stood a tall figure, a woman with eyes like frozen fire. Her gaze swept over the gathering, and Corin felt a pull, as if her eyes saw through the trees and mist, straight into his hidden form. "Tonight," she intoned, her voice echoing with an unnatural resonance, "we call upon the asterisk old blood asterisk to summon our true leader, one who will rule these cursed lands, commanding both beast and man. The hunted will rise, and the wolves of shadow will finally be unleashed." Corin felt his heart pound, his breath coming faster. Asterisk old blood asterisk. It was a term he had heard only in fragments, whispered in ancient lore passed down through his family. He had thought it nothing more than a tale, a myth from a time when men and beasts were one. But now he realized it was no myth. He was not simply cursed, he was a vessel, a means to bring forth something far darker. The chanting grew louder, their voices merging into a droning hum that vibrated through the air. The fog thickened, curling around the figures as if alive, obscuring Corin's view. His instinct screamed for him to run, to escape this nightmare gathering. Yet, something held him, a force stronger than fear. He gripped the pendant, feeling it burn against his skin. Just then, the woman's voice cut through the fog, sharp and piercing. "Show yourself, beast of Duskwood," she commanded, her voice both a taunt and a summons. "You cannot hide from your fate." Against his will, Corin felt his body move, as if invisible strings pulled him forward. The fog parted, and the cloaked figures turned toward him, faces hidden but eyes glowing with an unnatural hunger. The woman's eyes locked onto his, and he felt the weight of an ancient power pressing down on him. "Welcome, Corin," she said, a wicked smile curling at her lips. "We've been waiting for you." Corin felt a surge of rage and fear, an urge to fight against this dark force that had claimed his life. But as he opened his mouth to protest, his voice caught, silenced by an invisible grip tightening around his throat. He saw his reflection in the woman's eyes, and what he saw chilled him to the core, a beast he no longer recognized, a creature bound to darkness. And then, in a flash, the vision came again, him, at the head of the blood-eyed wolves, leading them toward the village. This time, he heard the screams, felt the thrill of the hunt. It was a future he dreaded, and yet, deep down, a small part of him felt an undeniable pull toward it. The fog closed around him once more, and Corin's vision faded. The villagers would sleep peacefully tonight, unaware of what lurked in their midst. But he knew that soon, very soon, they would wake to a world they no longer recognized. As he staggered back into the shadows, he could still feel the woman's eyes upon him, hear her haunting whisper echoing in his mind. Asterisk, embrace your fate, Corin. The hunt has only just begun. Asterisk, days passed, and Corin found himself gripped by a strange, mournful calm, as if he were watching his own life unravel from a distance. The pendant remained in his possession, its weight now less physical and more a constant ache within him. Each night he saw visions of the blood-eyed wolves and the hooded figures, their calls growing louder, more insistent, filling his mind like an unstoppable tide. And each night, he resisted fighting to hold onto the shreds of his humanity, to keep from becoming the monster he'd always feared. But the fog grew thicker, a dark, silent mist that swallowed the village of Ebon Ridge. The villagers began to whisper of strange things in the night shadows that moved without bodies, eyes that gleamed in the dark. The fog brought with it a weight, a heaviness that seeped into their hearts and homes. Crops wilted, animals vanished, and an eerie silence settled over the once lively village. They started to believe the asterisk beast of Duskwood Asterisk was not a legend but an omen, a curse upon them all. One night, as the village slept under the pale, watchful moon, Corin felt the final call. This time, it was not the silent pull of visions but a violent urge that shattered his resolve. His body moved on its own, driven by a hunger he no longer had the will to fight. He could feel the beast within him tearing free, clawing its way to the surface. In a frenzy, he stumbled through the forest, his body morphing, twisting into the form he had fought so long to restrain. When he reached the village, the fog parted, revealing the empty streets, silent and haunting. The familiar homes and faces, the memories of his past life, they all faded away in the haze of his vision. All that remained was the scent of fear and the thudding of heartbeats behind closed doors. He howled, a desperate, mournful sound that echoed through the village like a harbinger of doom. And then, he began to hunt. One by one, he tore through the village, his mind lost to the beast's rage and hunger. Doors splintered, and terrified screams filled the night air as he brought down anyone in his path. The fog thickened, swirling around him as if it, too, thirsted for blood. Shadows gathered at the edges of his vision, ghostly figures watching, their eyes gleaming with approval. At dawn, the village was silent once more, now an echo of death and despair. The bodies of those he'd once known lay strewn across the ground, their blood staining the earth. Corin stood in the center of it all, his senses clearing, the weight of his actions settling upon him like a shroud. He gazed at his blood-stained hands, at the hollow faces of those he'd once loved, and a wave of sorrow unlike any he'd ever known washed over him. Then, in the stillness, he felt a presence behind him. He turned, and there stood the woman from the forest, the one who had summoned him. Her eyes were cold, triumphant. "You were always meant to lead," she said softly, a cruel smile on her lips. "You are the harbinger, Corin. This was your destiny." Corin dropped to his knees, the pendant slipping from his grip and falling to the ground. He looked at the lifeless village, at the devastation he had brought, and a broken cry escaped his lips. The beast had taken everything from him, his family, his humanity, and now his home. He was no longer Corin, he was merely a shadow, a creature bound to darkness. As the woman faded into the mist, Corin felt the final, crushing realization settle over him. He was cursed to wander alone, forever haunted by the memories of those he had destroyed. The fog would follow him, a constant reminder of his own monstrous nature, a silent, spectral prison from which he would never escape. And so, Corin walked into the endless mist, a lost soul in a world that no longer held a place for him, his sorrow trailing behind him like a ghost, as eternal as the fog itself.